Hello, everybody. My name is Rosie, and welcome to Turn On the AC, a podcast where we talk about what it is to be an Asian Christian creative navigating through life in today's modern society. We hope to create community, inspire, challenge, and encourage our fellow creatives with each episode. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Turn On the AC podcast. Today, I have Michael Hari with me. Hari is a good friend of mine and someone who is such an encouragement to be around. He's the type of friend to hype up your dreams. Hari is a Chinese Indonesian and is a college dropout that risked everything to pursue his career and hacked his way up to becoming a software engineer. So he's worked at a couple agencies before landing a job at Apple, and now he is a software engineer at Unity. And for those who don't know what Unity is, because I didn't even know what Unity was, it powers about 70% of the games on the App Store. So that's really cool because, again, I did not know that that's what you did, Hari. I just knew you did software engineering. More recently, he's founded a company and is working on a mobile card game called Holsom that brings people to have deeper connections and conversations with each other. And the app will soon be in beta and released by the end of this year. So Hari, thank you so much for being on this podcast with me. I'm super excited to have you because when I look at you, I'm just so inspired to also continue to create. So you've been that friend that supports all of my crazy ideas and gives wonderful feedback. So thank you. And with that, I kind of want to go into the first question because you give such wonderful advice for me. What is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, Rosie.
Of course.
I think if I had one feedback for my younger self, it would be to take more risks, I think. Well, two things. I think it's take more risks and be yourself. I remember when I was growing up, I think when there was a time in my life, not to start this off super deep already, but there was a time there was a time in my life I remember when my mood, my emotions, my happiness that throughout the day was dictated on the people that I spoke to. So if I spoke to the cool kids on campus, if I spoke to, these certain group of people, I'd be happy that day when I got home. Or, but then if I didn't, I would just feel depressed and stuff. And I remember it was, early me was I was just trying to fit in and stuff like that. But when I truly found myself and when I became the happiest was when I just was myself. I remember the year after what I told you happened, I was just like, why am I dependent on so many others' opinions of me or who I talk to? God created me to be like this. I'm just going to be me. And so when I did that, it was all the chains broke free and I was able to really find myself and be happy. And I was very happy with who I was. It just took me that conscious decision of being myself to get there. So definitely be yourself. And the other one is take more risks. I felt like I could have taken more risks a little bit earlier. I don't know if that's true. Yeah, I could have taken more risks a little bit earlier because what do you have to lose? Sometimes when you play it safe, life also feels a little bit too safe and, maybe you won't be too happy or something. But I think for me, yeah, those two things, it would be take risks and just be yourself. So,
yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. What's a risk that you've taken recently?
Recently?
Yeah, okay. Recently.
Well, define recent. Is it do you mean recent?
This year.
This year. Yes. Okay. So it's kind of a risk, but at the same time, it's there's a lot. Okay. So there were a lot of changes this year. I just moved back down from San Francisco. Where I was for, half a decade or over half a decade. And I moved back down to a little tiny suburban town in Southern California called Walnut, back in with my folks, which for me is not the most comfortable, after being your own person for so long, coming back. And don't get me wrong, I get, I have cut fruit for me and its parents are great, but it was definitely, I knew exactly what I was getting myself into, because now that I'm here and, you know, they won't let me pay rent even though I want to, which is very sweet of them.
Sweet, yeah.
But I'm able to take a lot more risks. So my current risks right now are whatever money or capital I have, I'm throwing it into the card game that you mentioned earlier. It's called Holsom. You know, it's an app to create meaningful conversation. And so I'm throwing, you know, like I'm doing a lot of like big risks in terms of financially. Yeah, so there's that, you know, creating Wholesome, which is basically like, I mean, it's a app that's hopefully it's going to be launched soon. It's almost done.
Yeah.
And then also the most recent one that I've gotten into are something called NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, which yeah, it's kind of crazy because just to give a primer on your audiences, non-fungible tokens are like you might have heard of art that are sold online for like $100,000, $130,000, stuff like that. They're basically a non-fungible token is something that like when you it's not directly, it's like a very unique piece of art, and so only you have it in the world. You know, like there may be a lot of duplicates, but on the blockchain it says like that you own it, like you're the owner of it. So I recently on the Cardano blockchain, I recently purchased these clay people, and it's a pretty ridiculous amount of money for one. One image of a clay person was around, when I bought it, it was at $1,000. So it was a little bit risky. Yeah. I bought a couple, but today it's worth a lot more than that, which is great. So basically crypto, I think, is, you know, cryptocurrencies, that's another risk that I'm taking as well. So, but being able to be back with my folks, honestly, even though, you know, through its struggles, I know what I was getting into, but I'm able to risk a lot more, and I am. So, yeah.
Wow, I learned something new. I didn't know about that, about the original art pieces. That's really cool.
It's kind of nuts. Yeah.
So what has God been revealing to you recently?
Yeah, I think, man, a lot of things. I mean, one is, you know, there's, again, moving back down here, it is like a big shocker and a big change. And I think with that, it's really easy to just go about your own way. I had a huge church community up in San Francisco, up in the Bay Area. I was very close with them, and, you know, I was very in tune with church and stuff like that. And when I came back down, it was very easy for me to be like, okay, I went ham. I went 100%, helping build the, you know, tracks department in that church, leading groups, and, you know, and mentoring people and all that. I was like, it's time to chill. I'm like, I came back down here and I'm like, I'm just gonna not do anything. But like doing that for like maybe a month and a half or two, I just can't, you know. I think God was really speaking to me. I was just passively watching the worship when I was at church, and God's like, so come on, like it's time to serve again, you know. And I'm like, God, I just don't want to go so hard anymore, you know? And I think it was like that still small voice is like, who says you have to go hard? Just like, you know, like I think the thing that he's been teaching me is, which is pretty fundamental, honestly, but it's like the more you give, the more you serve, the more you get out of it too. And I don't think people realize that. I think when people think about serving God, they think about how much they're losing and how much they're giving away of themselves. Yeah. You know, but they don't understand the benefits. They don't understand the fruits that you get out of that sowing. You know, the skills that you get, the relationships that you build, like the talent that you build for yourself. You know, it's disproportionately so much more than just like, oh, I'm serving, I'm not getting anything out of it. It's not true. Like when you serve God, there's so many fruits that come out of it. And I'm pretty sure you experienced this too, you know, helping out with your church and having so many skills and so many friends and such a healthy and beautiful social community out of it as well. And just being poured into spiritually, you know. So I think it's that the more you give, the more you reap, you know, in terms of serving God. I think that's like the thing that God has been teaching me again lately. So yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I love what you said about serving. I think a lot of people, yeah, look on more of the negative aspect of I'm losing time.
Yeah.
But when we see the bigger picture, like you said, when it's about the relationships that we're cultivating, the friendships that we get to walk into like people's lives and see. And I was just listening to this sermon or kind of like this, I don't know what to call it. Like they had questions for these really good speakers, and one of them was Jenny Allen. And she was saying that um, that we can dream big for God's kingdom, but also the little things matter. Like if
So
someone
good.
is telling their testimony to you, or even like just wanting you to keep them accountable, like you're still doing something for God's ministry and for his kingdom. And I was just like, that's so true for myself, because I was like, man, I need to do more. Like,
That's
you
so
know,
good. Yeah.
but God reminded me that the small things that we're doing now is still building his kingdom. So,
Come
so
on.
that was good. That's good that God's teaching you that in this season, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess I would kind of want you to, if you could share your testimony on how you found Jesus, how he's helped you through your creative journey, and where you feel like he's leading you right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was fortunate enough to find Jesus at an early age, you know. I think it was around well, I mean, I was born in Indonesia. I came over here, and you know, my family, the Indonesian community in Southern California are very much Christian, even though my mom was quote unquote Catholic. And so that was kind of the social circle of my parents at the time. So we would go to church, and, you know, I'd grow up putting $1 in the tithing basket and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I remember I didn't really find Jesus, I think maybe around middle school, until around middle school or 7th grade or so. One of the troublemakers in, you know, growing up in the church, he was a little bit old, I was a little bit older. He's probably like in college when I was in elementary school. He was like the bad kid. He was the bad boy. He used to be like an ex-Asian gangster. His name was his name was Mike too, Michael Baja. And he found Jesus because like one of his friends were like, "Hey, you want to come to this retreat? There will be girls." And he's like, "Oh, of course," you know. And so he came for the girls, but met Jesus instead, you know. And that was when he audibly heard God's voice and stuff. So afterwards, God completely changed his life. He started this ministry. And my brother got involved with it. You know, it was like, what's going on here? So he got involved kind of with it, and he told me to come. And I'm like, I guess I'll check it out. Like, Mike's church? Like, are you kidding me? Like, I guess, you know? And so I went to this retreat with like 30 people or something. And that's when I really found Jesus, where I really felt his love, and I really experienced, I guess, his, just experienced Jesus for the first time.
Yeah.
And my life was changed after that. You know, I started going to church every Sunday. I started going to group. I started, leading groups at a young age and stuff like that too. You know, just like this dumb teenager leading other dumb teenagers in my garage for years, every Friday. And it'd stay till 2 a.m.
Wow.
And they'd sit on my pillow, and I'd get pink eye almost every week. You know, it's kind of disgusting, honestly. And it was really like that's how I kind of found Jesus. And through the creative journey, I think, honestly, all my creativity, all my right brain skills, like I was saying earlier, it all came from church. For example, I dabble into a lot of creative hobbies here and there. Photography and videography, that was kind of cultivated in the church as well. I remember we'd have like media camps or whatever, where we'd just like stay over for 3 days, and a bunch of kids with, somebody who was like passionate about making videos, and they would just teach us how to make videos on these crappy camcorders and stuff. And that was kind of how I started to get into video, and then I started cultivating my experience there with design as well, like designing the brochures with my pirated Photoshop, or Illustrator when I was in like 8th grade or so, and getting design feedback from like the director. It was like intense,
Yeah.
And then also like music as well. Music was like a big part. They needed a bassist, so I'd play bass, and I didn't know how at first. They needed a guitarist, so I needed a guitarist. And that theme has kind of consistently been, that theme has been consistent throughout my life. Like when I moved up to the Bay Area, and I moved up for this hacker boot camp, or this like software engineering boot camp, and it was 3 months of me just not being able, because it was 6 days a week, I wasn't able to go to church, and I felt so dry in those 3 months. But of course I found a church up here and ended up committing to that church for the next 6 years or so. And in there, I, auditioned for acoustic guitar, and they're like, we actually need an electric guitar. I was like, all right, I'll learn electric guitar. Picked up electric guitar, and so like, and then afterwards, picked up Ableton after and stuff like that, like being an Ableton tech, kind of like leading the charge there. So most of my creative hobbies come from church. There's something called Johnny Harris has a really good video on this on YouTube, but something called excited accountability, where people want to get into something, people want to build a skill, but sometimes they're too lazy to do it. But I think the best way to do it is have something called excited accountability. When I say I'm going to play on a Sunday, it's like I have to perform on Sunday, or basically like I have to play well on a Sunday, so I'm going to practice for it. And the excited accountability is that, like, you're able to play in front of people and you glorify God, and also, but you have to work for it. Like, you have to be good at it, or else, it's that excited accountability of there's something holding you accountable. And I think church was that for me. Church always gave me a platform to challenge me creatively. And I think that's kind of been my creative process. And even, that all bleeds out to other things as well. Mm-hmm. All those skills that I talked about go into, creating the app, or, like marrying the skills in my job with my creativity, like with design and connecting people together in groups and stuff like that. And so everything just kind of connects into this beautiful thing, because a lot of it is because of church, because I'm always challenged, because I'm always called higher, so that's kind of how my creative process has been, I think, with God. Well, yeah, and you had one more question. What was the last one?
Yes, it's so where is he leading you now?
Yeah, I think for me now, it's honestly it's a strange time, because I think back in San Francisco I was very gung-ho, like I said, like 100%. And the Bay Area and LA are two very different places. Everything's so chill here. Like the 100% in LA, like of like serving God is maybe like 40% of like what I would do up there. Yeah. So I think with me it's just kind of picking that baton back up, and I think being even more transparent in my faith, and however that looks like, whether that's with my friends or in church, being able to lead people and stuff like that. And I think for me, like, he's recently, I think one of my callings has been generosity. I think God has been leading me to that. Like, I don't mind being generous with people and stuff. And so, if I hear somebody's like having a hard time, I'll be like, okay, let's see what we can do there and stuff like that. So I think,
so sweet.
Where God has been leading me is that just kind of just being a blessing to people. Honestly, I think that's it. Like, whatever the blessing to people and the community, however that looks like, whether that's serving people, or serving the church, or serving people just one-on-one basis, I think it's that, just being a blessing to people and community. That's where he's been leading me lately, for sure. So
that's awesome. I love how you started with the church, and how the church sort of cultivated your love for creativity and media, and to see you grow from that into this app that you're creating, which we're going to talk more about. But it's just really neat. You're so multi-talented, Hari. Like, literally, you can do a little bit of everything, but you do it so well. So how did your parents feel about you pursuing this creative field? Were they always supportive? Was it something that they had to come around to accepting?
Are you talking about like software engineering, like my career wise?
Yes, that. And also even now with you saying you wanted to create this app. So we could dive into both.
Yeah, sure. So with software engineering, it was a little bit tough at first. So as you can imagine, an immigrant family coming here with nothing from Indonesia, and then their kid, 3rd year into school, going, "Hey guys, I think I want to drop out of school. I'm not learning anything.
Oh no.
I hate it." And there's a new path. There's something called software engineering boot camps. I went to this one called Hack Reactor, and it's 3 months, and the pay afterwards is really good. Like, they give you just hard skills. They're like, "Is there a degree?" I'm like, "No degree, no certificate, just skills, hard skills." And so they were like, yeah, no. At first they were like, actually, no, that's not true. They were very hesitant to it at first, but they've trusted me. They've seen my track record. At that time when I asked them, I had a couple things under my belt to have it be an easier pill to swallow. I like, every time I would, quote unquote, not listen to them or disobey them, it might be the more frank term, it's always resulted in something great, kind of. So for example, like, my friends and I we were editing this one video because we recorded something really cool that happened with our friends.
Yeah.
And my parents are like, "They're just using you, like, tell them to go home, it's late." And I'm like, "Guys, you don't understand what's going on here. Just leave us alone. Let me edit this video." The video ended up, it was like this, like, downtown Disney flash mob proposal video. It ended up getting millions of, like, I think 17 million views on YouTube today. And and it's like, it's like, because I didn't listen to them, like, they, and afterwards they saw that. And so, and in school I would, like, be really crafty, and like, for example, this one time, it's kind of, I don't know how I feel about this, but I lost my textbook in school, and so I'd buy, like, candy bars and sell it, and, like, I'd be like, "Oh, I lost my textbook, I'm just selling." So my friends would buy a bunch. I'd buy it from Costco and, like, sell it and stuff like that. But I would just keep selling way past the point of, after I made all the money back from my textbook. And then I just bought a used one for, like, 1/10 of the price, and then gave that, and I kept the profits and stuff. So they knew that, so they knew that I did all this stuff. So they knew that, he has an okay head of, on his shoulders and stuff. So when I told them I'm gonna drop out, they were like, "First of all, what's your plan?" And I'm like, I told them about the software engineering bootcamp, and they're like, "Okay, but you can go to there, but you have to promise us that you're gonna finish school." I was like, hold on. And so, there was a lot of compromise. There was a lot of, like, I'll just pause school for now, which is true. I just, like, paused school. I just, in my head, I'm like, I could convince them, what's the point of getting a job? What's the point of getting a degree? The point of getting a degree is to get a job that can make money, right? But if I can just circumvent that part. In my head, it was like that. When I just show them my paycheck, maybe that's just a good proof. So I can have this deal with them now where it's like, okay, maybe I'll go back to school. I didn't promise to say yes, I was just like, okay, maybe I'll think about going back if it doesn't work out. But, like, I mean, it turned out it did work out, and then, when I showed them the job that I got and everything, they're like, "Yeah, okay, fine. But honestly, sometimes, like, because when my parents are hairdressers, sometimes I get a haircut there, and they'd be like, even today, they'll be like, "So when are you gonna go back to school?" It's like, "Why, Mom? Why? Like, I'm a working man. Like, I'm doing fine. Like, what's the point and stuff?" And it's like, "Yeah, well, just my friends' kids have this degree," and I was like, "Yeah, okay, of course, that's why." So, yeah, they were very hesitant at first, but I think I'm thankful to have parents that trust me and have had an unorthodox route too. My dad made it in Indonesia as an actor and a model, so I think when
cool.
when he realized, like, he was like the Gatsby of Indonesia. Honestly, that's a story for another time. That was nuts. But I think because of that, he was more open to unorthodox methods, unorthodox approaches, and dropping out of school was to pursue software engineering. That field was a little bit of a shocker for them. In terms of Wholesome, I actually did not tell them about the app until 2 days ago.
What? Like recently? 2 days ago?
Recently, 2 days ago. Yeah. The story about Holsom, it came up because I love, I think whenever you lead group or have group or something, you kind of always start out with an icebreaker and stuff like that. And also, like, just with people, you ask them, like, I don't like to fluff around. Like, I like to go deep in conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Me too.
Yeah, and have meaningful conversation. And I remember, whenever I talk to my dad, and and we have a kind of like a barrier as well in language because I can't speak Indonesian that well and he can't speak English that well.
Yeah.
So every time I'd ask him like, hey dad, like how are you? You know, like a genuine question, like how was your day? Like what have you been up to? What are you going through? Like, oh, it's fine. I'm good. Yeah, I'm better than you. I'm better than you. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like that's it. That would be his only question, you know? And I remember I was like, there's gotta be more to this than that. So every time I come upon a good question, like a meaningful question,
yeah,
I'd write it down on my phone. And I remember when we went on our first family vacation to Europe, you know, our first family vacation ever really as adults. We were in the dinner table and I was like, hey guys, I'm thinking of like just a long shot here, but I'm thinking of developing like a card game. You know, like I have these questions. Do you guys maybe want to answer some over dinner? I don't know. It could be fun. They're like, yeah, sure, and stuff. And so like I pulled up the first question and I was like, so when were you happiest in life?
Ooh,
And
that's a good
just
one.
like my dad just like everything, like the most detailed stories with like it just unlocked these conversations that I've never had before, you know. And he would tell me when like back when he was famous and stuff like that, he'd be like, yeah, every night I'd, you know, go to the club because they'd want me to sing because like I was famous, obviously. So I'd get in my taxi and my taxi driver would be like, hey, you look like that JDF guy, which is him. And he wouldn't say anything. And then like they drive him to the club and he'd get out and everybody would mob him. And the taxi driver would be like, oh my God, you are him, you know, and stuff like that. And it even got to points where like it's like kind of testy, but kind of funny as well. Where he looked at my mom and was like, yeah, remember like when we go to the club and then in the hotel next door, they were my friends too. And they just give me the penthouse suite. And I just told you, hey, just go up to the penthouse suite and, you know, and just like relax there and stuff like that. My mom's like, that wasn't me. And he was like, he was like, that was, he was like, oh, okay, no, right. That was before you and stuff like that. So it was like really funny. Yeah. And so like it just unlocked these conversations that we've never had before.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's something here. I have to make this into a game. So I showed them the game 2 days ago. I told them like, hey guys, I'm working on something. Because every time they're, you know, being over parental and like being in my room and want to hang out with me and stuff. I'm like, listen, guys, I'm working on something right now. Can you guys please just give me some space? And of course they don't understand. And so I was like, okay, I want to show you guys what I'm working on because we're almost done. It's going to be in beta soon and I want to show you guys. And I like told them the story that I just told about how we were in Europe and, you know, like that's when I decided I wanted to make the card game. And they were like, you know, very joyous and they're very proud and happy and stuff like that. And yeah, I think, you know, I didn't really tell them that this was what I was working on. I just told them I'm working on something and I feel like it's going to be big. And they're like, okay, we trust you, whatever it is. Like, I believe it, you know? And so I think with my fortunate track record so far, they've been, you know, they gave me the benefit of the doubt. So, yeah, so that they're happy with it. They're proud. So, you know, I can proud Asian parents. That's always a win. So, you know.
But going back, so I think that's really cool. And you kind of went into your app. So let's talk a little bit more about Holsom, which I'm super excited about because we've played it together and I love Holsom. I love the look of it. And I just love the questions and the prompts. So again, I'm so excited for the audience to be able to play with Holsom as well. But what was your thought process when going into it? Was there any doubts and how did you overcome those in order to make Holsom what it is today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think there are a lot of card games out there that has like good prompts. You know, there's like We're Not Really Strangers, Icebreakers, Table Topics. And there's like it's a lot of great games out there. But when I looked on the phone, I was like, you know, sometimes I want to play those games, but they're not on mobile, you know, and they just have like cards, and I'm not going to bring like a block of cards in a bar or like hang out with my friends. I'd be like, hey, you guys want to play this game? You know, like, and just bring it out. So with me, it's kind of like, you know, like if I had it on my phone, it'd be great. And so I'd scour through the app store for trying to find a game like that, and I couldn't find a good one. There were some, but they were all just, the UI was very clunky. the questions aren't very deep. They're not very poignant. I like deep questions, and so,
Yeah.
or a mix of fun questions and deep questions.
Yeah.
So I just decided in my head, I'm going to do it. And this was an exercise actually. So I'm a developer by nature, I'm a JavaScript developer. Am I able to build this app myself? Yeah, I am, but it would take me so much longer with my full-time job and everything. So, part of the going back to the risks part, I took this as an exercise for me to not do the bulk of the work and to find the right people to do that work,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what I challenged myself with this one. And so for me, it was kind of like an exercise. Like if I lose some money, fine, that's cool. So I remember back when I was in college in Cal Poly in my third year before I dropped out, or my years that I was there, I worked in this creative firm called Gas Creative Group, which is like the marketing company on campus. And I met some amazing people there. They're all at amazing firms. There are designers and web, and I got exposed to all that very in a professional setting in that job. And I remember this one girl has a certain design aesthetic was exactly what I was looking for. Pastel colors,
Mm-hmm.
very like a nice soft touch, not feminine, but a little bit softer. But like very like digestible to the eyes. And she's the head of UX at like the Hulu app for Apple TV. Like that's her work. And so I reached out to her. I asked her, like if she would be down. I was like, yeah, I'm down. So I was like, okay, let's hire her and spend this scary amount of money to make these designs, and so that was kind of like the risk I took. And then I was looking for a developer, and then she was like, hey, my boyfriend is a developer, a React Native developer, which is what I was looking for. And I was like, let me talk to him and stuff like that. And so I kind of emailed him, and I remember going back, I remember searching his name through my emails to find an email exchange that we had. And I didn't realize this, but 5 years prior, he asked me questions about Hack Reactor, that the software engineering bootcamp I went to. And I was the one that actually pushed him into software enginering. Wow. Like I was the one that kind of gave him that push. I was like, I got you, man. Like if you ever need me to talk, but I haven't talked to him for 5 years, so I completely forgot,
Yeah.
And so it was like this full circle thing of I hired the designer, and the designer's boyfriend is the person that I pushed into software engineering, who's now my developer as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So was there a risk? Like definitely there was a risk, there's like financial obligations to it, but I really wanted to challenge myself to not. Another lesson that I learned this past 2 years, I think, was one of the biggest things is don't do everything yourself. If I think the most successful, and this is touching more on business now than it is creativity, but I think the most successful business people aren't not just people who are able to do it themselves, but people who are able to put the right people together to build the product that they want. And so for me, I wanted to let my money work for me and not have me just work. And so I just took it upon myself to like, I'm going to be the kind of like the vision person, the product person, so I could lead the design and I could lead the development with my opinions, but they're the ones that actually implement it because they're better at it than I am, And so I'm just going to let them do it. So for sure, there's a risk. There's still a risk today. Is it going to be successful? I hope so. Maybe hopefully we can go back into this podcast in a couple months or in a year and be like, oh, okay, yeah, Holsom did well. But there definitely is a financial risk to it. And, but, if I'm very risk tolerant right now. And so if this fails hard, if this fails, I hope it fails hard too. I'm okay with that. I've learned so much along the way and just been blessed with the process so far. And I love the product, and thank you for saying that you love it too. I've played it with friends and it's unlocked some very, very meaningful conversations. Conversations that I would never have had if it wasn't for this game. So I hope it blesses people in that sense as well.
Yeah, I believe it will be successful. We're speaking positive affirmations here.
Yes. Amen.
And that's really cool because you've always been a risk taker. And, ever since you decided to drop out of college and then move up to San Francisco, like that's all been a huge risk. Where do you think that comes from? Like the confidence and the riskiness and, believing in yourself to be successful. Where does that come from for you?
That's a great question. Honestly, honestly, I think it goes back to that first story that I told in the beginning of our interview of how before I was so my personality and my happiness was based on other people. But when I really found that in God, and when I really, found that identity in him, it was kind of like, if he's for me, who could be against me? Like it's
Ooh,
really,
so good.
it's really that
Yeah.
mindset of like, what do you have to lose, really? At the end of the day, let's say hypothetically, I lose it all. I work too hard on my app. Okay, let's say worst case scenario. I work too hard on my app. My job is like, Michael, what are you doing? You're not performing. They fire me. Holsom fails. I lose all my money.
This is so bad.
Worst case scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what? Well, I'm okay. I have supportive parents that are still behind me. I still have friends that love me. I still have God who's for me. What's the worst that can happen? That's always in the back of my head. Like, I remember talking to my friend who was, like, very risk. They were very scared of risk, and they would always like just play it safe and stuff like that. Every time I talked to them, they would, they'd kind of wait for me to give me this motivational speech to them so that they can go and be a little bit risky. And at one point I just had it, Rosie. I was like, listen, you always wait for me to give you this motivational talk so you could just, take the step or something like that. Like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I was like, you have to find your own engine. Wow, and I was like, why don't you take risks? Like, tell me, why are you so afraid of taking these big steps to, to better yourself and stuff like that? And they're like, well, honestly, I don't know. It's like the fear of failure. I was like, you should be scared of waking up at 35, still in your parents' basement or garage and still playing video games. That's what you should be scared of. Like, not failing.
That's good. Yeah.
I was like, if you're going to fail hard, dude. Like, try your best so that, you fail really hard and stuff like that. But, but of course, like, I'm speaking from this place of like, I know who I am. I know who I am in Christ. I know who I am. I know the skills that he's given me. All these skills have been cultivated mostly in the church.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we've talked about this before, but I have this like sick like way of thinking in my head. Like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna if I fail, I fail, but I'm just gonna do it. In my head, there is no failure. Honestly, like, if I'm gonna do something, it's gonna be successful. Like, in my head, that's just how I work. There is no like, what if, the what if, like, of course I have it in the back of my mind, like, okay, what if this fails and stuff like that. But in my head, like, I just pushed that to the side. And I was like, no, this is going to work out. It's going to be great. My ideas are valid. I'm just going to make them into reality,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think really it's just that confidence that I really think comes from God. I don't know where else it could come from, because it's sick, honestly. Like, the amount of like the assurance that I have in the things that I do. It's just like, it's going to work out. Like, there's no other way. Like, of course it's going to work, so it's, I can't say that everybody has like that way of thinking, because sometimes it's not even practical, but like, it's served me well so far,
Yeah.
I think there's always like a main road for people to take, and this is like very cheesy analogy and overused, but it's really true. Like, there's this main road where people take of getting a job and working that job and, retire when you're 50 or 60, something.
Yeah.
And it's such a safe route, but it's just like, I'm not looking for that safe route. So that requires me to take bold steps, And whatever those bold steps look like, in my head, it's gonna work out. So we'll see. We'll see.
So good. I feel like I can relate so much. And it's just like what you said. I feel like when you find your identity in Christ, you're so much more confident in who you are, that even if you fail, it's gonna be okay. And I also think that we're so blessed because our families and our friends support us in that aspect. And I know that can change the circumstance for some people. But I remember having conversations about people telling me they were scared to fail, or they weren't sure what they wanted to do in life. And in my mind, and I told this to them as well, and I was telling them to just do it. Because at the end of the day, you might not know if it is for you. And maybe you do it and you don't like it and you're
Right.
like, okay, now I know I for sure don't like this.
Right.
And so definitely to encourage anyone who feels like they're afraid of failure to not be afraid. As Hari
Amen.
was saying, like just to do it, just to go out there, believe that you'll be successful and be confident in who you are and who Christ has made you to be.
Mhm.
And I was trying to memorize this verse. Trying to memorize this verse. It's in 2 Corinthians 5:6-6, and it says, "So we are always of good courage."
Amen.
And I just love that because God did not give us the spirit of fear, but He gave us the spirit of good courage. And so, with that, do you feel that your ethnic and cultural background play a role in the things you create? Because I feel like you're very family oriented, and I feel like that's just an Asian kind of thing. Where I mean, not saying that other races are not family oriented, but definitely on this aspect, do you feel that your culture plays a part into what you create? And or do you feel that your faith plays a bigger role in the things that you create?
Yeah, I think it's a side by side thing. In regards to wholesome, it was kind of going against. It's kind of the opposite of what our culture kind of does, which is not talk about anything. Like Asian parents don't really traditionally don't open up too much about to their kids and vice versa. But I wanted to change that. I wanted to unlock that. So yeah, for sure, I think my culture has a big part to do with it. But I think in the opposite sense of I wanted to go against the grain and not just have how are you conversations. I'm good. How's work? Good. Like how's school? Good. But more of a deeper conversation than that. I want to get to know my parents, and they have so much life to talk about that we don't know of. They've gone through the crap that we've gone through as well. And even worse, like my parents were immigrants and they had to come here with nothing after having, so many things and losing everything. Like we were very wealthy in Indonesia. We lost everything in the 98 financial crisis. And so there's so many stories in that you don't get to hear because we're just not asking the right questions. And so I think I wanted to go against the culture and go against the grain and kind of ask those questions from my parents and unlock those conversations that now we've had. And it's like the stories that they tell me are crazy. And if you can imagine too, your parents, or whoever's listening, like your guys' parents or your friends around you where, or the elder people around you where it's like they have so much life to share, but we're just not asking the right questions to get those juicy deets, so
That's a good word, juicy deets.
yeah,
I love
juicy
it.
deets. The juicy deets, it's all in the juicy deets. And so yeah, and I think that of course paired with like my whole motivation for this, or my whole ethos from this, comes from my love for Jesus, for always wanting to connect with people, always wanting to share life with people, always wanting to go deeper with people. So I think those two things combined, again, it's all from, a lot of this is from serving, a lot of this like, I guess, emotional equity or their, empathetic knowledge comes from being a dumb teenager, leading dumb teenagers, like starting from there and continuously doing that throughout my life. You kind of build this tolerance and love for people, for people's issues, for people's problems, for people's journeys and their life. You get, you really get invested and interested in them. And it makes you just want to go even deeper with everybody that you meet. So I think those two things combined really made me the person who I am today. Sounds wholesome, like just me being as a person. I think definitely my my culture, my background, and my love for Jesus, I think those two things combined made me the person who I am today 100%. So
I love that. I also love how your parents are sort of this inspiration to create wholesome in a sense that you want to know them deeper on a deeper level. And I think we forget that a lot, just being like Asian Americans, that our parents also have stories too. Because we're so focused on us today, especially me. This goes for me as well. It's about me culture kind of thing. But we realize, as you were saying, like you wouldn't have known that your dad was this Gatsby character in Indonesia if you didn't ask the right questions. And so I'm so excited to play wholesome with my parents as well. And,
Great.
Just pop it up and take it anywhere I can go. So I'm super excited. Is there resources that you love learning from and would recommend? So this can be anything from like creativity wise to faith based.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to, I'm always interested in new products and how they look like and what are, the newest things to come out software wise and hardware wise and stuff. Producthunt.com is a great one to just always be connected to like new things coming out. I use something called Hacker News, which is like pretty nerdy, but like basically whatever's going on in the industry, the software engineering industry, you get to see kind of like the forefront of that. Reddit is my bread and butter. Whenever I Google something now, I always append Reddit to the end of it. So let's say like woodworking Reddit, I just Google that. And because Reddit is just such a wealth of knowledge, a lot of things that I know today actually come from Reddit. They're basically a bunch of random strangers online that are passionate about a certain niche, and Reddit has something called subreddits, which are basically like forums in its own thing. So you can get really deep in skincare with the Asian beauty subreddit, or woodworking with the woodworking subreddit, breadit, which is a sourdough bread, like
that's a good word,
subreddit. Yeah. And so all these subreddits they're very passionate people, and that's really honestly where I get all my knowledge from. And if the question is not asked yet, which it probably has, if it's not, you can ask the community, and they'll be because they're so passionate about the community, they'll chime in and give their opinions and stuff. When it comes to faith, I mean, there's so many great podcasts out there and so many great, sermons. I try to limit my, the amount of sources I get, like my preachings from and stuff, because I want to stick to one house. So currently right now for me, it's just been the church that I go to is a C3 LA. So I think that's like kind of like just my source of, we go really deep into theology. We go really deep into scripture, which is what I've always been looking for. So it's a great thing there. I mean, Elevation podcast, always great. Stephen Furtick's the man, Pastor Stephen Furtick. A lot of resources out there. And just friends, I think having those friends around your life that always keep you up to date with the latest and greatest, and also the people that, like you're the average of your five closest friends. And so I try to keep those 5 closest friends, to me, people that I look up to and people that I kind of want to be, or people that speak the same creative language as me. So I think those are great sources, but I think those sources are great ones to start out with, definitely. So.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely have to check out Hackers News.
Hacker News. I thought that one is a little bit intense, honestly. If you're going to Hacker News, I don't think
I would understand anything.
Sometimes I have trouble understanding like certain things, but it's like it's something like like the new Chrome update has the blah 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 support for like JWT tokens, and you're like, oh my god, amazing, stuff like that. Like that's just a random example, but so.
Super cool. Thanks for sharing those resources with us, Hari.
Of course. Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to your community.
Sorry, I have one more.
Yeah.
There's one more. There's one called Dribble. If you're a designer, Dribble with 3 B's, DRIBBBLE.com. If you ever want to get design inspiration, Dribble is the place to go. So you can create your artboard there. It's kind of like a Pinterest, but just strictly for design. So
cool.
Anyway, sorry.
I gotta check that out. No, you're good. That was definitely a really good resource as well. And I'll go ahead and I'll link all of those down below for if anyone who wants to check them out. So I kind of want to go back to your community of you serving at C3, but also like your 5 closest friends. And I want to know the process of you moving to San Francisco on your own, and how you had to find this community, especially a Christian community. I don't know if you like went to San Francisco and already knew people, or did you go there not knowing anybody?
I knew nobody. Well, that's not very true. So this journey that I went on of dropping out of school and moving up, I did it with a buddy. Thank God that I had somebody to do it with. My really good buddy, Will. We both are kind of always taking the unorthodox route. So we both dropped out of college together. It was really, literally, I was like in church this one Sunday, and I was very unhappy with where I was at in life and in college and stuff, not learning, even though I love to learn. One day he just came up to me and he was like, "Hey, so I heard like you're into computers and stuff." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you ever want to get to coding?" I was like, "Yeah." Well, okay. There's a longer story behind this. Basically, I met somebody in college who worked at this great company called TW Chiat Day, which is like one of the biggest marketing agencies in Los Angeles. I introduced my friend Will to him. He got Will into web development. Will found out about Hack Reactor, and then he at church that one Sunday he was like, "So I'm going to this hacker boot camp for coding. Do you want to join me? It's in San Francisco. It's 3 months and it's $18,000." I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." Honestly, I just decided right then and there. Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
no thought. This
is exactly what I was looking for. Let's go. And so I decided right then and there. Great, we're dropping out. Let's study. And so we would study till like 5 a.m. in McDonald's every day after work after work and stuff like that. So it was he was my buddy going up, and so we kind of did everything together. We got like a we didn't have money at all when we went to San Francisco, the most expensive city in the world, or in the United States,
Yeah.
So we stayed at this. It used to be. It's like a student housing that used to be a crack house, but somebody died, and they had to kick everybody out. And then this person who was a Mick Jagger impersonator bought the building, turned it into student housing. Anyway, it's a whole story. But we stayed in this 120 square foot room with me and 2 other people. So one of them was Will, and the other one is my brother-in-law, my now brother-in-law, who's also going through this program a little after us. We stayed there for 4 months in the Tenderloin, which is like the most unsafe neighborhood in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I had Will throughout all this journey. We'd like walk to. There was also this is another side story. I have a lot of side stories, but I'm going on this tangent because it's honestly pretty amazing.
You're good. Yeah.
Will's brother is super smart as well. He's I mean, not as well. I'm not super smart, okay, but he's like super smart. He was an aerospace engineer. He got a master's in it, but he just ended up doing software engineering and has his own company and stuff like that. He started this SEO business where he would basically have coupon codes for things, and people can search for it, and his would be like number 1 on Bing and Yahoo, and like number 3 on Google or something like that. So back then me and Will both, we gave him our Uber referral codes. Back then it was $30 a ride. And Rosie, we were like Uber gods. We had 2,000 free rides.
What?
And everywhere we would go, we would take an Uber Black SUV because it'd be free. In San Francisco, we just go to and from like a couple blocks in an Uber Black SUV and stuff, because his brother put our code up for like a weekend and there was so much traffic using our code as a referral code. It was nuts. Anyway, so we would like go all throughout San Francisco there, like Uber Black SUVing everywhere. And it was really crazy. So I had like Will for that, but I remember in those 3 months, it was like a really dry period because it was 6 days a week, 13 hours a day of coding and toy problems and like algorithms and interviewing skills and stuff like that. The Sunday, the 7th day, that we had off, it was for laundry and catch up. Like it was like a fire hose of information, and you had to catch up in all that time,
Yeah.
And so we didn't really have room or time to go to church. And so after going to church all my life, I just felt so spiritually dry at the end of it. After I found a job, I was like, I need to find a church. So I literally went on Yelp. I typed in non-denominational church, because that's the flavor I'm used to. And I found a church that was 1.5 miles away. Well, this is after I moved to San Jose for my first job. I found a church that was 1.5 miles away, which is biking distance, because I had my bike at the time. I didn't have a car or anything, and I still don't have a car. I'm still waiting for my car. And so I was like, great, I'll go there. And I just committed to going. I went there first. I was like, yeah, like this church, that's what I'm going to commit to. And so this was back when we were only 2 campuses. Now we're like 10 campuses strong, like worldwide,
amazing,
in Rome, Hawaii, Chicago, like all these places. But I helped built a church from there. And that's how I found the church. At first, it was really awkward because, Will was living in San Francisco. His job was in San Francisco, and I was in San Jose. So I didn't really have anybody to go with that church.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you know, but when you go to a new church and you're by yourself, it's just awkward. Like when you have a
I feel
buddy,
you. Mhm.
you have a conversation, you're like, chat. Oh, go back to your buddy, go back to your friend, you wait for another conversation to start up, talk, and then go back to your friend. I didn't have that. So I would go on my first Sunday, I'd have a conversation, bounce to another one, and then run a conversation. I'd be like, all right, bye. And I'd like just awkwardly leave.
Yeah, that's happened.
Yeah, and I do that for like a couple weeks, 5-6 weeks in, until finally I know enough people to bounce around conversations to finally be like, make it to lunch. They'll be like, oh, hey, we're getting lunch. You want to come? I'm like, yeah, for sure. And so, and that's what I'm doing now too. When I come back to C3LA, it's like starting from scratch again. Kind of starting from scratch again, because I've been a couple times, but I go on Sunday, talk with one person, talk with another person, talk with another person, and then I run out of people to talk about. All right, I'll see you guys later. So it's really just one thing that I learned about, like, one big lesson that God gave me probably like 2 years ago. So it's like, if you're not gonna be the one to go deeper, nobody, like, don't expect somebody else to initiate going deeper. Like,
Wow,
you're the
that's
one that has to
good.
take the charge.
Yeah.
Ask somebody to, lunch, or show up and stay, like those things you need to do. I think a lot of the people rely on the church, and they're like, yeah, the church felt so impersonal and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, no, did you make an effort? You probably didn't, because like, I bet anybody was open to just like having lunch or, talking and hanging out, but you never asked and you expected them to do it, And so, I think God revealed that to me early on, where it's like, you're the one that needs to make the effort,
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I found a community. I just C3LA is the sister church of the church I went up to in San Francisco, or the Bay Area, which is called Vive, which I'm still really connected to, and I'm still definitely a part of. But yeah, I think it is that the first church, Yelp, and which leads me to this church today too, because this is the sister church of the church that I Yelped 6 years ago. So
crazy.
Yeah,
Yelp works, guys.
Yelp definitely works. Yeah, so if your churches are struggling to get people, have them review your church on Yelp and do those Yelp ads, because that's how you get people nowadays. So
yeah, so I love what you're saying about the church, especially because I think I have a persona of like, when someone new enters in the church, we have to be welcoming and loving. And of course, that's what we're called to do. But also it's like a two-way street. You also have to want to have this conversation with the other person and be open and vulnerable at the same time. But of course, first day meeting, you don't have to be vulnerable. But it's really interesting. And I really love that perspective of you saying that we also have this role to play in being the initiators in the conversations, especially if we're new. I mean, it doesn't hurt to go up to someone you don't know and being like, hi, my name is Rosie.
Right.
I'm new here. Tell me more about this church. Tell me why you go here. And so I love that. And so, Hari, I guess we're coming down to the last wire of things. How can we connect with you, and how can we support you?
Yeah. So, you can find me on my Instagram at millionhari. Millionhari. That's my middle name. So MILLIONHARI. And yeah, my app is called Holsom. So just to give a recap of what Holsom is a card game, digital card game on your phone, where you can have, that can prompt meaningful conversations. So there's different decks based on different categories. If you want a fun deck, if you want a deep deck, if you want a couples deck, if you want just a dating deck, or there's a 36 questions to fall in love deck as well. Be careful with that one. Be careful who you play with. So yeah, if you want to support, our Instagram is also wholesome.app as well. So look out for Holsom. Is going to be coming out soon, probably in like the next 2 months or so. It's going to go into beta soon. So maybe in the next 2 to 3 months. Whenever this interview, if you're listening to this, we're currently recording in September. But if it's a little bit later than that, it's probably already out in the App Store.
Yes, it should be out.
Okay, great. So you could follow me on Instagram at millionhari, download Wholesome. Feel free to message me, connect with me. Yeah, I think that's all. Follow me follow me on the IG, and and also follow wholesome.app. So
Yes, download the app as well. It should be up by the time that this episode is up as well. And again, I'll put everything in the link below. So when it's up, I wonder if I could just like connect the App Store link.
yeah, you should be able to.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So it will be down there below. So definitely connect with Hari. He's such a great friend
Oh, thanks,
and
Rosie.
also such a great encouragement. And what is a word of encouragement that you would give to someone who is struggling with their creativity and faith?
That's a great question. So I will say this. I think, it's sometimes it's really hard being in the creative field because your creative field might not be the most lucrative. You might not make a lot of money with your field or your profession, and you know what, that's okay. If you really love it, keep going with your field, and I think eventually when you get enough work and projects under your belt, then you're able to kind of demand a bigger paycheck to help support your life. If that absolutely is not the case, and your creative field brings no money at all, and you don't know how to support yourself yet, it's also okay to work at a job that you don't love or are not quote unquote passionate about.
Yeah,
I think a lot of millennials and a lot of Gen Z folks are so drawn to this fact or this fake reality that what we see on Instagram of how these influencers or these people that are living their creative dream and getting paid for it, like that needs to be the golden standard. It's not. It's okay to have a job that you're not 100% in love with or passionate about. You can have your job to fund your creativity as well, until that creativity becomes your main job too. So it's not, don't always push yourself into this corner of like, oh, I'm not making it in life, nobody's gonna like my art and stuff. It's okay to or I hate my job and it's not what I want to be doing. It's okay to have your job fund your life. Your job doesn't have to be your life. So I just want to encourage the creatives out there who are maybe not the most financially secure. If exercising your creativity means having a job that that you don't love too much to help fund it, like that's a totally okay thing to do. So I really push through and just keep being creative, and when you're faithful to your craft, God will open doors. So
I love that. So good. So good. I mean, this whole conversation was so good.
Oh, thanks, Rose. Likewise.
So thank you so much, Hari, for being on here.
Of course. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. And with that, this is the end of this episode. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode of Turn on the AC. We hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. If you don't already, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and any other platforms that you're listening to. You can also follow me on Instagram at rose.xiong and Turn on the AC's podcast on Instagram at the.asiancreatives. You can find and watch us on YouTube at rose.xiong. Leave us a comment, rating, and a review. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends and family. If you enjoy listening to Turn on the AC and would love to support us, you can give us a donation on Anchor. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys on our next episode. Bye, guys.